Hello, and I will be showing you Casimir III or Poland. I will tell you about the 4 victory conditions I'd recommend if you were to play as him, his 2 unique units, alongside the social policies I'd recommend if you were to play as him. So he will have Solidarity, which means you receive a free social policy when you advance to the next era, which is fairly good. It really does help in terms of anything that you want, but the best thing I think it helps out with would be culture, and that's the #1 thing I'd recommend to you if you play Poland. Now again, he is a jack of all trades, so you don't have to do cultural victories with him, but I would say that that's the best, because again, you'll get a free social policy, and then through that I would get tradition, and then once you fill out the tradition tree, go with aesthetics, which is, I believe it was medieval era is when you're able to get that. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But again, when you do a cultural victory, do be wary of expansion, because if you expand too much, there's 2 bad things that happen with that. One, the AI doesn't like you too much, so they may attack you. And secondly, if you expand too much, the amount of culture points it takes to get a next social policy grows and grows and grows, and it makes it a little bit challenging to get those social policies filled out. Now I do know and I do understand that you don't need that for a cultural victory anymore, and rather you just need tourism and open borders and influence over other civilizations to win that. But reminder, the more social policies that you have, the more of an advantage you have over other players. So it is very important that you do get social policies, because if you have all the social policies regarding cultural and tourism things, then you will have a distinct advantage over those that don't. So remember that. So I highly recommend cultural victory. And then secondly would be domination. With the winged hussar, you will be able to dominate, but remember, if you do go with domination, I would strive for that throughout, and rather than going with tradition and things like that, I probably would go more or less alongside liberty. And again, really, once you get the winged hussar, you need to utilize him as best as you can and take over as many civilizations as you can in that time period, because if you are able to do that, then you pretty much have domination in the bag. If you've taken over, I'd say 1 to 3 civilizations, then you can kind of just clean up the rest of the game. And don't really go towards cultural stuff if you're going domination. Just a disclaimer there. And then take advantage of the winged hussar time period again, because that'll be the most important time to do so. So I would recommend domination. And then the third one I'd recommend is scientific, and predominantly because if you're doing a domination victory, which is very possible with Poland, then you'll be able to have a scientific victory just as well, because chances are you'll have lots of cities. Even if you don't have lots of cities, but you just have another civilization's capital, you'll generate a lot of science. Now I have heard that there's actually 5% nerf, I should say, per city that you have. So each city that you create, it'll cost you more science to keep producing technologies, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's more or less a bad thing on the AI, not a human player, because humans always build libraries and the such in most of their cities, at least most of the time. Plus, if you have your trade routes, you'll be fine. So again, if you're going domination, scientific is a good choice as well. So I do somewhat recommend it. And then lastly would be diplomacy. Not that diplomacy is not a possible solution, because when you're doing cultural victory, you will need to be somewhat diplomatic with city-states alongside AI. So do remember that this is a jack of all trades, and really anything is possible with Poland. And then there's no personality trait to directly help for a diplomatic victory. And then do get the patronage tree if you can afford it, but I would not sacrifice it for the tradition and aesthetics trees. But if you really are going for a diplomatic victory, then I would get tradition and then patronage tree. I get all those city-states as friends as yours, allies, and the like, and knock them out at the World Congress. And so I do somewhat recommend this one. And then now I will show you the winged hussar and the ducal stable. So the Winged Hussar will cost you 185 production or 370 faith. He has a mounted unit. He's got a combat bonus of 28, a movement of 5, and then his abilities will be no defense terrain bonuses, meaning if you're in the hills or the forests, you don't get a defense. He can move after attacking. He has a penalty attacking cities, so do be careful when you attack cities with this guy. He has heavy charge, shock 1, and formation 1. He is also the replacement of a lancer, so you will get him a little bit like medieval, kind of industrial era time period, and that's when you should go all out if you are to go a domination victory with Poland. And then I'll just quickly show you, I believe it's heavy charge, yep. So it forces the defender to retreat if it inflicts more damage to it than received. The defender who cannot retreat takes extra damage. That is what makes the Winged Hussar very, very potent. Then the Ducal Stable, essentially, well, it costs 75 production and replaces the stable, but essentially all it does is make your Winged Hussar and any mounted unit a lot stronger. Plus you'll get some gold out of it too. But outside of that, it's nothing more than a stable. Now, if you are going domination victory with Poland, do not just build all horses. That's a very bad idea, because a lot of the time the AI will build quite a few of pikemen, and pikemen plus horses do not go too well together. You will generally die. So make sure that you do have some form of infantry and siege unit if you are looking to take over cities, because for the most part the Winged Hussar will take care of all of the units out there outside of a large grouping of pikemen. So with that being said, I will show you the social policies if you were to play as Poland. Before I talk about the social policies, I'll tell you about Poland's general start bias, even though he technically doesn't have one. Normally you will see grasslands, sometimes you'll see plains alongside tundra. It all depends on what kind of game you're playing. Normally you won't exactly be near the coast. Generally you'll be in more or less inland if you're playing the continents, hemispheres, bigger kind of map types. Myself here, I'm playing on a continents map type, so I'm kind of surprised I was near the coast, because it usually won't happen. So now the social policies, tradition, if you're going for culture, would be the best thing to go for. I mean, staying smaller is somewhat recommended. You don't have to do it, but I would recommend it if you're going for a cultural victory. So you'll get some extra production while you're building wonders, plus 1 happiness for every 10 citizens, some extra growth in the capital, some unhappiness reduction per 2 citizens in the capital, some extra defense, cultural buildings. If you fill out the whole entire tree, which I recommend to do so, you'll get 15% growth in aqueducts in your first 4 cities, meaning that your first 4 cities will be huge, and that's very important. Then secondly, I would definitely go, alright, it's a classical era. Earlier in the video I didn't know where I thought it was medieval era. It's actually classical, so this really will make you win that cultural victory, or at least you'll have a very good shot at doing it. That'll let you get great writers, artists, musicians 25% faster. You'll be able to build the culture producing buildings 50% faster. Some extra happiness, or any happiness that you have excess, you'll get more culture out of. Great artist, free. You get some culture, increase 33% in all cities which have built a world wonder. So that synergizes very well with the traditions, 15 production when building wonders. So you do want to build wonders when you're doing this, because you'll get some benefit out of it too. And also reduces the culture cost of future policies by 10%. And then doing all of these will allow you to buy writers, artists, musicians with faith starting in the industrial era, it really helps around the later half of the game to fill up those slots for the tourism spots. And then also, before I end this, I'm trying to remember what it was now. I know with patronage, if you're looking for a kind of cultural, diplomatic scenario where you can kind of go either or, because if you can see somebody's about to win a cultural victory over you and you have the chance to win it diplomatically, the ethics reduces the culture cost of future policies by 10%. It's nice because if you see that somebody can win in one way or another, you could switch over to the next policy, to the patronage tree, fill out this bad boy, try to gather up all those city-states, make them your friends, get tons of delegates, become the world leader, and win the game that way. You can't win it culturally. So I do thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Please rate, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in some of my other videos. Thanks, guys.